What were your thoughts on the win for the Leafs in Dallas last night?
Well, I mean, it was a Berube game. I think that's probably the best way to put it. I mean, it wasn't as if they blew the Stars out of them. I think 19 shots on goal is kind of an indication of quality over quantity. And then, I mean, the storyline of depth playing a part of this hockey club, and it's something I think that a lot of people have wanted to know for a long period of time is, do they still have to always rely on the core four or, the top six to get things done? And quite frankly, that seems to be morphing into a team that has a great deal of depth.
Yes, and I think that's a positive thing, right? I know teams, you got to find different ways to win at different times. You see that all the time throughout the playoffs. But, Nick Robertson obviously has a good night. That third line was going. Are his days in Toronto numbered, or is he, finding a way to fight through this?
I think, Carter, the challenge would be for Brad Treliving to say, okay, listen, first of all, he's not costing very much. So, we can be patient that way. But is he the type of guy that could, get dealt somewhere and then cause havoc every time he plays somewhere else? And people are starting to lament that, why wasn't he like this in Toronto? I mean, I think last night, what is he, 5-0 against his brother? I think last night proves that this guy does have some talent. So I think you have to continue to stay invested in him. And with the way the team is playing and how the team is playing in its own zone, can you be patient with him? And I think the answer is yes. The Domi McMahon Robertson line was good last night, but let's see him when they're not playing against Jason Robertson. Let's see them on a consistent basis for 10 or 12 games. And I think then you'll get a better indication of whether Robertson's worth investing in, or then just trying to say, hey, okay, it's not working out. We have better guys that can fit that role.
John, to your point, I think the one thing I've really noticed so far with Brad Treliving in Toronto is his patience. Is this just a veteran guy who's been around before? Because again, there's been, different opportunities throughout this early season, guys in IR and that, where it felt like a roster decision was coming, then it didn't drop. Is that just part of the profile of Brad Treliving?
I think it's in his DNA, Nick. I think he's a guy that looks back and, he measured twice, cuts once. That's the type of thing that he wants to do. He's been through a lot. He had a lot more. I'll tell you what, he had a lot more pressure internally in Calgary than he does in Toronto, because I believe he has a great deal more support this time around with Keith Pelley and with Brendan Shanahan around than he did with ownership in Calgary. And I think that's an important thing to note as well. So Brad can take his time. It's also easier to take your time when your team's winning more than it's losing. So the patience goes hand in hand with the record. And I think that's an important thing to note.
Yeah, I do think that is important, right? I think that takes a lot of pressure away. And that same concept now is these Leafs win, and obviously Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz have been great and they have continued to win, but now you're without Anthony Stolarz, right? And the team seems to win. At some point, do they keep playing Hildeby, or do we maybe see Matt Murray here when they try to give Joseph Woll some rest during this little stint here with Stolarz out?
The noise about Murray, it just seems to never go away when these situations occur. So I don't know whether that's internal or whether that's people like us bringing it up constantly. So you do have to wonder about that. The other thing that I would say is that I really think there's a belief in Hildeby in this organization and an ability to give him a chance. And then you have to hope that Stolarz isn't out for 3 months, that it's 4 to 6 weeks, as they've indicated. To me, that's a big part of what's supposed to happen, what's going to go on. Joseph Woll was supposed to be this guy. He was supposed to be the starter. Anthony Stolarz was supposed to be the backup. It was probably supposed to be two games for Woll, one for Stolarz, and it's worked out almost the opposite when you consider how well Stolarz has played until the injury. So I think that if you go 2 games for Woll, based on whether there's back-to-backs or not, like this weekend, and then Hildeby gets a chance, then I think that's probably the way they should and will go until Stolarz returns.
John, I tell you right now, when the Leafs say somebody's day-to-day, I brace for the worst because it's happening way too frequently. I'm just curious, again, not to date you. You've been around for a while. What are your thoughts, or how do you feel the Leafs, handle situations when it comes to injuries? Because it's not the first time we've dealt with something like this.
I don't think the Leafs are any different than any other team in the National Hockey League. I think this is something that on a local basis, people start to roll their eyes at and think that it's only happening to their hockey club. Nick, trust me, it happens everywhere. Carter, you know that. I mean, every time you were hurt, somebody from the organization, whereas the PR guy or an assistant general manager, would come to you and say, "Here's what we're going to tell people. Here's what we're saying. You better, buy into it." And I think I think the Leafs are no different than anybody else.
Yeah, John, you're not wrong. Yeah, there's been some times you just keep your mouth shut about injuries or and even like when it was better superstars, right? We would be told as a team, like, hey, this is what you say and this is what you don't say. And speaking of stars, someone who's really stepped up this year for the Leafs, obviously Tavares, right? I think we've seen that now with some of these guys that didn't make the Four Nation Cups are playing so well post, I guess, cut. Maybe the pressure's off. He's lost the C. Is there a chance we see an extension for him in season, you think, or where are they at with John Tavares?
I don't think they're in any hurry to sign John Tavares to a new contract. I think we all know that John Tavares wants to play in Toronto. We all know that it's going to be a team-friendly extension when it occurs. Perhaps the biggest discussion is, what will the term be? Is it going to be 2 years? It's going to be 3 years. But they're in no hurry at this point, and it dovetails, I think, with everything else they have to do. How much money will be available for John Tavares? Remember, this is a team that in previous administration, albeit, they got Jason Spezza for $1 million. I'm not suggesting Tavares will take $1 million, but I think that he will get something that fits well within the Maple Leafs cap plan in order for the Maple Leafs to continue to find better, more profitable players to play for this hockey club as they try to find a way to end the drought.
Tell you what, John, as a content creator in this market, I love it. They got a $35 million top line. Your thoughts on the big three playing together?
Well, I tell you what, it's funny. I have become such a huge William Nylander fan. I just love the way he plays. I love the way, and I think he drives a lot of people nuts. I think he drives some of the coaches nuts at times too. But I just love the way Nylander plays. And I think Mitch Marner has gone to the next level as well. And to me, the guy that is, remember, they were 7-1 without Austin. So when you could put Austin Matthews back into that mix and put those three guys together, it is as prolific a line as we've seen in a long time in the National Hockey League. Not just the Maple Leafs, but the National Hockey League. I wonder, though, I mean, this team did so well without Austin that are they trying to put everybody together to get Austin back going? What is the goal of this? And by the way, so line 1 is what it is. Line 3 is what it is. It's all because John Tavares can play second line center. I mean, at the beginning of the season, we all thought Tavares was going to be the third line center. And now, as prolific as he's been, it allows them to load up on the first line, and it allows Max Domi to go back where he should be as the number 3 center.
Yeah, and slotting is obviously so important, right? I've seen that for so many years, having guys playing in the right role. And I guess maybe I'm newer to this other side of it, right? I've always been in the moment playing and a few years removed here, but it feels different in Toronto. It feels like this team is built the right way. I was played for Chief. Is there something you think this team needs as we start to creep near the trade deadline, or is it, just kind of wait and see here?
I think everybody always thinks they need two things. They need one more physical defenseman. I think every team in the league says this, and I think that somebody says, well, we could probably use another center. We could probably use another top 6 forward somewhere along the way. But this team's a heck of a lot closer than most. I think right now, I think the Maple Leafs are the best team in Canada. I think the Maple Leafs might be the best team in the Eastern Conference. But there's a caveat to that is, will their goaltending hold up? And Joseph Woll did the job last night, but they need to make sure that their goaltending can hold up. But right now, when you look at, I do a lot of stuff in Winnipeg, Carter, and we talk all the time in Winnipeg about the depth of the team and the ability for contributions from everybody. the Maple Leafs are seeing that as well. The Maple Leafs are seeing a comparable level of contributions. When you have all 12 forwards play the game for more than 10 minutes, you know something's going right. You know that there's a confidence in everybody taking their regular shift. Even Ryan Reeves played 10 minutes last night. So from that perspective, that's a real positive for this hockey club. But everybody's always trying to, get the extra guy. If you're going to go deep in the playoffs, which is something that's unheard of in Toronto, you're going to go deep in the playoffs. You need 9 defensemen. You don't need 6. You need 9 defensemen. And you always need another forward to be able to contribute at some point. So I don't think the Maple Leafs are any different than the other 31 saying we need another top 6 and we need another physical defenseman to play the game.
What do you think about another reunion with Luke Shannon?
I think he fits the mold of what we're talking about. I don't know what's going on in Nashville. You wonder what the thought process is there with what's happening. I think Luke Shannon, who has reinvented himself a number of times, could probably be a real asset to any hockey team he goes to. I'm not big on speculation of trades, Nick, but the name is out there, and that Nashville is figuring they have to do something either to get from a couple of contracts or just change the scheme. If I'm Barry Trotz in Nashville, who traded, they traded Matthias Ekholm a year ago, I'm not trading any good, solid character defenseman again. I'm not. So it might be a little too much to think, but if you're a Maple Leaf fan, and I think you'd want Luke Shannon back playing at some point, maybe not every game, but as part of the depth of the defense.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of teams lining up to get a defenseman like Luke Shannon, especially as the time rolls in, if he is on the market. But, for me, I guess with this Leafs team, seeing the way that they're coached now and the way that they play and that consistency, do you think there is that, it is a bit different now? I guess you've watched the Jets. You've seen that consistency. Obviously, they have Connor Hellebuyck, which is a big difference, right? Where now it seems like they're playing a little bit more of that predictable hockey. And in my case, the teams that I played on, when we had that defensive zone structure and that predictability, it made us so much more dangerous. And I think that's what I'm really starting to feel now as I see this Craig Berube coach Maple Leafs team.
Well, that's the biggest difference in this hockey club. Not you guys can't check your notes, but name the top 3 defensemen for ice time last night, and top 3. Was Morgan Riley one of them? The answer was he wasn't one of them.
No,
there you go.
He was 4th. There were 3 other guys with more ice time as defensemen last night in Dallas, and I think that speaks to where the improvement of this hockey club. That's not a knock at Morgan Riley, but Morgan Riley's now slotted properly as well. So from that perspective, that whole side of the puck, what you talked about, Carter, about playing in your own zone, better defensive structure, that's the biggest difference in this hockey club. This team could always score, but it couldn't necessarily keep the puck out of the net. The goaltending has helped, and certainly, McCabe, Tanev, and Ekman-Larsson, who were those 3 guys, those guys have made a huge difference to this club.
John, last one here. We know the trade freeze is coming on later on tonight. I know you talked to a lot of people. You get the sense there's going to be more activity, and do you think the Leafs could be part of it or probably not?
I'm one of those guys that I was proved wrong yesterday. I think most people have the trade freeze already started. I think that there's the human aspect and element to this when people say, if we trade for a guy, well, is he going to be able to play on the weekend? If you talk between trading an American to a Canadian team, will you get your immigration papers in time? There's lots of little things that probably go into this. So my thinking is for the most part, most teams right now, the trade freeze has already begun. And if I'm the Maple Leafs, I'm not sure what I'm trading. What am I doing right now? Take your time. Find a way. You still have cap issues if you're going out to find big bodies and big numbers. You're probably going to be doing it more in the new year than you are right now.
Patience is a virtue. I know you hate talking about yourself, but you got a new podcast coming out with Darren Millard, right?
January 3rd, 100% hockey. It's going to look at I tease the guys at the NHL. It's going to look at the National Hockey League outside or west of the Hudson River. And so we're going to have some fun. 3 days a week starting just after the new year. And by the way, just as a quick thought, I know you guys got to go, but I met Carter's dad in Buffalo one night. I was down there doing an Oiler or a Flames game, and I met Carter's dad down there, and he was telling me how proud he was of his son playing goal in the National Hockey League. So it's a thrill to meet you, Carter, and you've done a hell of a job on this side of the microphone as well.
Oh, thanks, John. And there's not too many people around the rink my dad didn't run into. So he liked to find his way around and trainers or security guards. But I appreciate it. It means a lot to him. It means a lot to me as well. Thank you.
Well, that's what guys from Thunder Bay do, right? That's what guys from Thunder Bay do all the time.
Yeah, very well said, John. Appreciate your time. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. We'll talk soon, okay?
Merry Christmas, boys.
See you, John.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Roseau. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.